The Complete Works of Florence Scoville Shinn. This compendium is made up of her 4 books, and today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the concept of inner conversations, affirmations. The idea behind this is that, and we've spoken about this over our discussions, and we're going to circle back to inner conversations in the upcoming videos, is that within our mind, all day long, we are carrying on these inner dialogues, inner conversations. And if we order these conversations to be in alignment with our vision, then we notice that the circumstances, the people, the environment, the information that presents itself makes even more sense. We also notice that things change, our behaviors change. We also notice that we have more joy and in harmony, meaning in relation to our vision. Now, some of us on the journey, we experience what we call inner resistance. Over the last few videos, we've been talking about this, inner resistance. And the idea behind this inner resistance is that what appears to stand in our way, the source is within. It's the meaning we're giving to what we interpret as standing in our way. And this internal conversation that may be riddled with what we call inner resistance is creating unnecessary frustration on the journey to bringing forth what we desire. Thus, it's important to order our conversations. Now, in one of her books, she states, one of the greatest messages given to the race through the scriptures is that God is man's supply, and that man can release through his spoken word all that belongs to him by divine right. He must, however, have perfect faith in his spoken word. So it's the thoughts that we have. And as we've been discussing, the thoughts in relation to our self-image, concept of self. And as we order the conversations to be in alignment with the self-image in relation to the vision, what we notice is that we find more joy, bliss, ease, and relationship with what shows up on the journey. Now, I want to share with you a little story to reflect upon it and weave all throughout this conversation. When I was in corporate, I had a mentor who was also my boss at the time. And he is very wise and taught me many things about business and so forth, especially when it comes to leadership. And he seemed to have had maybe not a very popular way of going about doing things, which even at that time I found it to be frustrating. But upon retrospect now, as I reflect back on my experiences, I realized what he was doing. He was helping me reorder my inner conversations and be in alignment with my vision, develop a higher degree of inner conversation that is in relation to confidence, self-esteem, and bringing forth my vision from a place of flow. One of the things that he used to do was whenever I had an idea of a change to do in the department or some kind of technological proposal as far as integration goes in the company, and I was working in the IT department at the time, he would ask everybody from the department to gather around, and as I would present what I would suggest, they would appear to break apart and criticize what I was saying. And I thought, he was kind of being really harsh on me while he was doing this, but then I realized that something interesting happened as I would experience this circumstance, what would otherwise appear as unnecessary. I noticed I would develop a higher degree of self-esteem. I noticed that when objections were given, rejections were given, I would find within myself the accurate interpretation. And as the team members would give me different rejections and objections in relation to my proposition, I found myself more confident and able to respond more mindfully. Now, this translated into a higher degree of success when it came to going into the entrepreneurial world and leadership and so forth. And I have him to thank for helping me uncover a higher degree of confidence-based inner conversations by placing me in those what I would call controlled chaos-based scenarios, challenging situations that would reveal what she talks about here, which is a man knowing the power of the word becomes very careful of his conversation. He has only to watch the reaction of his words to know that they do not return void. So what she was saying is that my inner conversations were playing out as the theater that you could say my boss at the time, my mentor at the time, was placing myself in, that was further developing me. And what I was reacting to in the earlier stages, which was the rejections and the objections from the team members, eventually started to not have the same meaning. And I no longer had the reactivity to it, but rather a mindful response. And what I noticed is that after those kinds of circumstances that my boss had put me in, I would have different kinds of inner conversations, and they would continue to evolve as I would go through my journey, and they continue to evolve more so each day. And it relates to what she states here. Through his spoken word, man is continually making laws for himself. She says, I know a man who said, I will always miss a car. It invariably pulls out just as I arrive. His daughter said, I always catch a car. It's sure to come just as I get there. This occurred for years. Each had made a separate law for himself, one of failure, one of success. This is the psychology of superstitions. Now, in relation to ordering our inner conversations and my story and what she discusses is that I was making up my own laws in my own mind that had nothing to do with the outcome, the end result, which was to see that particular idea I had into integration into the company. What it was revealing as I was presenting it to others was my own doubts, indecision, fears, and reactivity. Now, she also states nothing on earth can resist an absolutely non-resistant person. So the key to this then is to not react, but rather to recognize that if we go into a place of resisting rather than integrating what the outer world is presenting to us, then we're creating unnecessary friction in our own mind, which will further externalize, thus relating back to the inner conversations. Because what are we saying when somebody gives us an objection or a rejection? What are we saying when we place ourselves in challenging situations where we incur certain kinds of reactivity as far as the experience goes? Are we saying that what we desire to be brought forth is not valid, that we don't deserve it, that we're not good enough? Or are we saying that we are in harmony and in relation to our vision? So when she says, he must, however, have perfect faith in his spoken word, she's referring to the inner conversation, faith in the vision and any kinds of inner dialogue in relation to the vision that then presents itself in how we express and how we communicate with others in the outer world. So keeping with the theme with her work, which was largely centered around the concept of affirmations, let's create an affirmation that will further allow us to be more faithful in our inner spoken word. You could say, I realize that the infinite supply is available to me in this moment. It is revealed through my inner dialogue and inner conversations. I realize that my inner conversations express and return accordingly. In relation, I choose to further emphasize the importance of inner conversation in relation to my vision. Thus, empowering conversation that moves me forward becomes a way of being. It is who I am, and thus I'm able to experience it more so as I deal with people, environment, circumstance on the day-to-day journey. So what we're doing is we're tying inner conversations and being relatable to the success, the vision, via the inner conversations. It's a form of mind recalibration. We're recalibrating the mind, rearranging the mind, and allowing it to reflect the vision in the outer world experience in relation to what we imagine to be true, which is our goal, which is our success. As she states, hope looks forward, faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. Faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. We've been speaking about the empowering paradigm, the perspective, all that we can imagine already exists in the unseen existence. We may not see it with or experience it with the five senses yet, but it is in the process of becoming through the rearrangement of the mind. In other words, the more we maintain the inner conversation in alignment with our vision, the more we will find that the outer world seems to change, which includes the behaviors, which includes how we relate to people, to reflect the vision with accurate precision to what we imagine to be true. Now, what we imagine to be true is also what is referred to when she says here, faith knows it has already received and acts accordingly. So, already received means what she stated in the beginning. One of the greatest messages given to the race through the scriptures is that God is man's supply, and that man can release through his spoken word all that belongs to him by divine right. He must, however, have perfect faith in his spoken word. So when we speak, do we speak with resistance? And if we identify this resistance, can we release from this resistance? Absolutely, we can release from this resistance. And this is one of our goals on the journey, is to identify where the inner resistance is. So we look at our goal, our vision, and we say, what are the things that we know we have to do to produce results? And do we have inner resistance to doing those things? Because I remember in 2013, prior to that, I was kind of consistent on my workouts and exercise regimen, but it wasn't until 2013, around the same time when I started this channel, where I maintained a higher degree of consistency of my workouts, and thus actually never ended up missing a workout unless I intentionally chose to take a break. That level of consistency was found through my inner conversation. I had an inner conversation with myself relating the fitness regimen, the goals, over to the fitness regimen. The story was, the inner conversation was, that as I continue to maintain consistency of my exercise routine, it's going to present itself in authentic communication of persistency, which is going to translate over to other people receiving my words and reflecting that as success. So in other words, living my philosophy. This was, you could say, very motivating for me, but it was actually true in my inner conversation. And I had already realized that this was the journey to the destination, which was maintaining faithful to that assumption. The assumption was that as I maintain consistency of my workouts in relation to my vision, I was able to create success in other areas of my life, such as my business. By affirming that to be true, I recognized that it became true. I noticed that I was removing the inner resistance. I was finding all the reasons to do something. And she even states, the road to success is a straight and narrow path. It is a road of loving absorption of undivided attention. So we could say that on the journey, as we integrate this, we are giving undivided attention, loving absorption on what is in relation and in contribution to the vision. So what is paving the pathway in relation to the vision? Well, this is very apparent in our inner dialogue, our inner conversations. What we say when we talk to ourselves, what we say when we talk about the things that we know we have to do, what we say when we talk about whatever shows up on the journey and related to the vision, further affirms and brings us down this, what she refers to, the straight and narrow path, which is actually also referred to as flow-based path to the destination. She says that is the secret of success, to make what you are doing interesting to other people. Be interested yourself and others will find you interesting. So this is a very important quote, and I want to reflect upon it even deeper with you. This is the secret of success, to make what you are doing interesting to other people. Be interested yourself, and others will find you interesting. So when we're looking at leadership or presenting or communicating with others, what we want to do is communicate from a place of authenticity. And authenticity means that we are living the philosophy. And to the degree that we live the philosophy, we will find that it externalizes as people around us also living that philosophy and producing the results. So when she states, be interested yourself and others will find you interesting, what she's talking about is valuing via the inner conversation, the inner dialogue, the inner affirmation, all the different aspects of your journey and seeing it and knowing it to be true and recognizing it and speaking in your mind from a place of faith that it is in fact in contribution to your vision. She says your big opportunity and big success usually slide in when you least expect it. So we've been talking about this, and I recommend watching the video that I did on facilitating quantum leaps. I mentioned that when a person's in flow, deep present to the now, having fun and enjoying the journey to creating success, they usually find the big breaks in non-linear ways. They find the opportunities, the breakthroughs, the things that lead them down the pathway to accelerated results. We call this self-confidence. When a person has a high degree of self-confidence, they show up and they know everything is going to be working out. You could then say that that person is a representation of this quote here. Hope looks forward, faith knows it already received and acts accordingly. Faith knows it as already received and acts accordingly. Hope looks forward. So the distinction is that we're not hoping for things, we're realizing that it already exists. We further affirm through our inner dialogue of how everything is in contribution and in relation to our vision. And this outer world is rearranging to reflect our vision. And by the way, all of this is done through inner conversation, what is actually in relation to your vision as far as your reasons why. So going back to the examples, that particular story that I shared about my experience with my mentor, notice that those were important elements related to us. Someone might look at that certain situation that I was in with my mentor and say, why did he do that to you? When I look back on that, I say, he did that to me because he was growing me. And to further verify it, I had a conversation with him, and he actually revealed to me that that was what he was doing. He said to me, he says, it's one thing for me to explain it to you, but it will never replace experience. And he's like, by placing you in a situation like that, you were able to benefit from this. And he's like, well, and I could do that with you because I recognize that there was a part within you that knew that everything was going to lead you to your destination. So you weren't going to look at this and create unnecessary conflict and say, why are you putting me through these circumstances? Instead, you saw it as value. Now, it's not to say that I knew that precisely and that vividly in that particular moment. As I reflect back on my journey in life, and as many of us reflect back on our journey, we'll actually see how the things in our past were in contribution to who we become today and where we're going tomorrow. But it's a reminder that it's really coming down to our interpretations within, which is our inner conversations, what we are affirming. The truth is that we are affirming, inner dialoguing all day long. And these inner dialogues are shaping how we relate to the outer world, everything on the journey in relation to the vision. And we can change these inner conversations through understanding. So when she states, we can learn to control our thoughts in the same way by gentle determination, not force. What she's referring to is understanding. So it's showing up via deep level of understanding within. The answers are found within. So let's go a little deeper into this. Inner conversation guidance. So as we've been discussing letting go of inner resistance, and as you've been integrating the information regarding removing the unnecessary inner resistance, what you're finding is that you're guiding yourself from within. You actually knew the way to your destination, and your way may be distinct to you. So thus what happens is you end up trusting yourself, develop then a further degree of higher self-esteem, self-confidence, and what you'll also notice is that you will listen to yourself and find your guidance within more so. And as stated here, she says, no matter what you are doing, ask for guidance. It saves time and energy, and often a lifetime of misery. Unless intuition builds the house, they labor in vain who build it. Get the habit of hunching, then you will always be on the magic path. The intuitive person is never undecided. He is given his leads and hunches, and goes boldly ahead, knowing he is on the magic path. So we're discerning here, and we're asking ourselves, we may look at the accumulated knowledge that we have got on the journey, but we also want to go beyond that and recognize that we can find deeper meaning within. This deeper meaning within is what is stimulating this very profound and deep inner voice conversations. One of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs on his commencement speech was when he said, don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. And what he was referring to was listening to and trusting yourself. We can listen to the opinions, we can keep them into consideration, but it's important to recognize that at the end of the day, you are the only interpreter of this reality, and you have the power to decide what opinion is true in your reality. And she states, we have the power of choice. We may follow the magic path of intuition, or the long and hard road of experience by following the reasoning mind. So the reasoning mind is important, and what we also want to work with is the power of intuition. We can become overthinking or overly identified with the reasoning mind, and thus create unnecessary complexity and inner resistance. And the way that I do it is to simply ask the question, what do I need to do next? And the idea shows up. It could be a simple task or a simple project or a simple thing that I got to do. And all I got to do is see it all the way to completion. Now, why am I doing it? Is it because what I do relates to my vision? Perhaps. But another reason why I do it is because it brings me into a deeper connection with that intuition-based true inner voice, which is distinct from the mental chatter. She says, by following the superconscious, we attain the heights. In the intuition are the pictures of eternal youth and eternal life, where death itself is overcome. We have the power to impress the subconscious mind with the picture of the eternal youth and eternal life. So we could say eternal youth, eternal life, or any kind of elements in relation to your vision are received within the subconscious, and our goal is to hold true to the vision received from our subconscious via our inner conversations. So he says the subconscious, being simply power without direction, carries out the idea, and we have our bodies transmuted into the body which can never die. So as we reflect upon this quote and we further affirm it, a lot of the unnecessary resistance seems to taper away. And what we find is a deeper, more meaningful inner conversation. We recognize that we are far more than the confines of the body. We are actually transcendent to the body. And thus, when we can understand that, we'll have higher control of the body, getting ourselves to do the things that we need to do. Now, this is facilitated by the inner conversations because it's happening in the mind. Notice how when you have an inner conversation in relation to your vision, you seem to know what to say, what to do, and how to respond rather than react. And if you have an inner conversation that seems to create unnecessary resistance towards the vision, notice how it tends to lead to unnecessary frustration. Thus, when she states, when you are undisturbed by a situation, it falls away of its own weight. Your life is outpictured by the sum total of your subconscious beliefs. Wherever you go, you take these conditions with you. So this ties into what we've been discussing over the last handful of videos, which is the self-image, the concept of self, the identity that we assume ourselves to be. And we're assuming an identity. And we can change this identity if you'd like. What we want is to bring forth an identity that is more true to how we actually really are. And we know when we are in that identity, or more so each day, based on our inner dialogue, our inner conversations. We'll notice that whatever shows up on the journey, we appreciate it, we're more joyous about it, and we're able to work with it a lot easier. For example, even in the business space, when we look at business dealing and sales, rather than looking at rejection or objection as you are not good enough, you see it as what can be done about it. Here is a rejection, here is an objection. What does it actually mean? Is it something that I need to optimize, or is it something that I can look at my own inner conversations within prior to these interactions, or what I dwell upon on a day-to-day basis, to reveal how I'm creating this unnecessary resistance every time I receive an objection or rejection? Then I can embrace and reflect upon the importance of the objection and rejection and transmute the meaning over to how it's related to my vision. I gave some examples on a video that I did, a Neville Goddard-based discussion where we were talking about prosperity. I'll put a link in the description so you can work with it. But when we go back to one of her main contributions to the space of working with the mind, we recognize that it's about inner conversations or affirmations. So we can work with formal affirmations, or we could also observe our inner conversations and bring it more so each day in relation to our vision. Such as if we experience unnecessary frustration on the journey, we can ask ourselves, what does this frustration mean? Why does it exist? What is the true meaning? And allow yourself to find the meaning within. And what you'll notice is that you will find the meaning more so each day. And to further facilitate this, I recommend watching my video I did on 7-Day Mental Diet by Emmett Fox. And synchronistically so, as I was going through the complete works of Florence, Scoville, Shinn, there was actually a foreword written by Emmett Fox in there. So that video will be very complimentary, because then what happens is through the process of the mental diet, as Emmett Fox refers to, we can remove unnecessary complexity and convolution in the mind that is facilitating unnecessary complexity and resistance-based expressions in the outer world by sticking with what he refers to as a mental diet. And the fundamental concept of the video is very simple, but it may be challenging in the beginning, but we can get better at it with practice. And that is to not judge the negative thought, but simply not identify or dwell with the negative thought, and to practice it. As we continue to do this, what we'll start to notice is we'll still have inner conversations, but the inner conversations will not be reactive to the mental thoughts. The inner conversations will be what can be done, how it is possible, you are worth it, and all these kinds of empowering inner voice conversations that we want in relation to the vision. So I trust that you enjoyed this video. We can conclude this video with an affirmation, and we're going to further discuss in our conversations. Again, we've discussed it before, but we'll discuss it again in this Sunday's video. And here's the affirmation that we can use. I realize that my inner conversations can be adjusted more so each day. I realize that I have the ability to receive the accurate inner conversations within. Through hunches and inspirations, ideas, insights, and perspectives show up to accurately interpret the different experiences that I have each day and bring it to harmony and in relation to my vision. Thus, I also notice the accurate interpretations bring forth a higher degree of faith. I also trust those elements and follow, which may appear as an unconventional path, knowing that it is my distinct pathway to the realization of my vision. If you want to copy this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.